Maria approached the elevator bank. She noticed a man in an expensive suit, looking confused and frustrated. He was holding a phone and speaking rapidly in what sounded like Mandarin. Maria recognized the stress in his voice immediately. "Excuse me," she said in perfect Mandarin, startling the businessman. "Are you looking for the international conference room on the 15th floor? The man's eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, how did you know? I've been trying to find it for 20 minutes. My GPS isn't working inside this building." Maria smiled warmly and gave him detailed directions in fluent Mandarin, even explaining the best route to avoid construction areas. The businessman thanked her profusely before hurrying toward the elevators. What Maria didn't know was that CEO James Morrison had just stepped out of his office to grab coffee from the break room. He stood frozen behind a pillar, listening to the entire conversation. In his 15 years running Sterling Enterprises, he had never heard anyone speak Mandarin so fluently, not even their international business team. His coffee grew cold in his hands as he watched Maria return to her cleaning cart, humming softly to herself. The same woman who had been invisibly cleaning his building for over a decade had just solved a problem his executive team struggled with daily. James felt something shift inside him. He had passed Maria countless times in the hallways, barely noticing her presence. But now, everything about his morning routine felt different. He quietly followed her at a distance, curious about what else he might discover about the woman who had been hiding in plain sight all these years. 20 minutes later, Maria was cleaning the executive floor when she heard voices coming from the conference room. Through the glass doors she could see a group of people gesturing frantically at documents. She recognized the scene, another international meeting gone wrong. A woman in a red blazer stepped out, looking defeated. She was on the phone, switching between broken Spanish and English. No comprendo, I need translator, ¿dónde está?" Maria quietly approached. "Perdón, señora, necesita ayuda con la traducción." The woman nearly dropped her phone. "You speak Spanish?" "Sí, perfectamente. What seems to be the problem?" The conversation that followed revealed the depth of Maria's expertise. She wasn't just translating words, she was bridging cultural gaps that had stalled a $15 million construction project in Barcelona. The client was frustrated because the American team didn't understand the Spanish approach to business relationships. "Tell him," Maria said to the woman, "that in Spanish business culture, trust comes before contracts. He needs to feel respected as a person, not just a client number." Within minutes, Maria had transformed a failing negotiation into a breakthrough. She explained Spanish business etiquette, suggested personal touches that would honor the client's culture, and even recommended specific phrases that would show genuine respect. James Morrison watched from his office doorway, his morning coffee now completely forgotten. This was impossible. Maria wasn't just bilingual, she was professionally fluent in languages his company desperately needed. As the Spanish conversation ended successfully, a new crisis emerged. A French delegation had arrived early and was arguing with security about their appointment. The security guard was getting agitated, and the French visitors were becoming increasingly insulted. Maria heard the commotion and smoothly transitioned into fluent French, but James noticed something remarkable. She adjusted her entire demeanor, her posture became more formal, her tone more diplomatic. She understood that French business culture valued sophistication and protocol. "Monsieur, je vous présente mes excuses pour cette confusion," she said with perfect pronunciation and cultural grace. Within minutes she had not only resolved the scheduling conflict, but had also arranged for the delegation to have coffee service and comfortable seating while they waited. The French executives were so impressed by her cultural sensitivity that they asked for her business card. Maria's face flushed with embarrassment as she explained she was part of the cleaning staff. James counted in his head. That was 3 languages. 3 languages from a woman his company had overlooked for over a decade. But more than that, she understood international business better than his entire executive team. His assistant, Jennifer, approached him with a worried expression. "Mr. Morrison, you've been standing here for 30 minutes. Your 9 a.m. meeting is waiting." James held up his hand, still watching Maria. "Cancel my morning meetings," he said quietly. "All of them." Jennifer looked confused, but nodded. James had never cancelled meetings before. Something was happening, and she could sense the change in her boss's demeanor. Maria finished helping the French delegation and returned to her cart, completely unaware that her entire life was about to change. But James had already made a decision that would shock everyone who knew him. James spent the rest of the morning discreetly investigating Maria's background. What he found shocked him. Maria Elena Rodriguez had graduated summa cum laude from the University of Chicago with degrees in international business and linguistics. She spoke 9 languages fluently and had worked as a translator for the United Nations before taking the janitorial job at Sterling Enterprises. The question that haunted him was simple. He called his HR director, Patricia, into his office immediately. "I need Maria Rodriguez's complete employment file. The janitor who works the morning shift." Patricia looked puzzled. "Is there a problem? Maria's been exemplary for 12 years. Never missed a day. Never had a complaint." "That's exactly the problem," James muttered, reviewing Maria's original application. Under the education section, she had listed high school diploma. Under previous experience, various cleaning positions. Every single line was a lie by omission. As James dug deeper, he discovered that Maria had applied for multiple positions at Sterling Enterprises over the years: translator, international business coordinator, even executive assistant. Each application had been rejected without explanation. The rejection letters were form letters, barely personalized. James felt sick reading them. His company had turned away exactly the talent they needed most, multiple times. He found performance reviews from Maria's supervisors. Every single one was glowing. Exceptional attention to detail. Solves problems before they become issues. Somehow anticipates building needs. Of course she anticipated needs. She understood what was happening in those international meetings. She probably knew more about Sterling's global challenges than his entire executive team. James closed the file and stared out his window. Somewhere in this building, a woman with extraordinary talents was emptying trash cans and mopping floors because his company had failed to see her worth. The revelation left him both ashamed and determined. This wasn't just about one employee, it was about systemic blindness that had cost his company immeasurably. He picked up his phone and dialed Patricia again. "I need you to arrange something." "And Patricia?" Not a word to anyone about this conversation. The next morning, James arrived at the office an hour early. He positioned himself where he could observe Maria's routine without being seen. What he witnessed over the next hour changed everything he thought he knew about his company. Maria didn't just clean. She solved problems with surgical precision. She noticed a water leak behind a filing cabinet that would have caused thousands in damage. She reorganized supply closets with a system that anticipated seasonal needs. Most remarkably, she left helpful notes for international staff members in their native languages: Korean for the IT consultant, Portuguese for the new accounting manager, Russian for the night security supervisor. James realized she had been quietly managing international communications for years, completely unofficially. But it was the phone call that broke James's heart. Maria was cleaning near the reception desk when her phone rang. She answered in what sounded like Arabic, and James could hear the desperation in her voice even without understanding the words. Her responses grew shorter, more strained. After she hung up, she sat quietly for a moment, tears streaming down her face. James approached carefully. "Maria, is everything okay?" She looked up, startled, quickly wiping her eyes. "Oh, Mr. Morrison. I'm sorry, I was just family emergency. I'll get back to work right away."
"What kind of emergency?" James asked gently.
Maria hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "My nephew in Syria. He's trying to get refugee status here. But the paperwork is complicated. The Legal Aid Society doesn't have anyone who speaks Arabic well enough to help him. They're threatening to send him back." The weight of her words hit James. While she had been helping his company navigate international waters, her own family was drowning in bureaucratic complexity. "You speak Arabic too?" "Among others," Maria said quietly, then caught herself. "I mean just a little." James's mind was racing. The Korean notes in the supply room, the Portuguese instructions for the cleaning staff, the Russian safety warnings. That was all you, wasn't it? Maria's silence was his answer. How many languages do you actually speak, Maria? The question hung in the air between them. Maria's eyes showed a mixture of fear and resignation. After 12 years of being invisible, she was finally being seen, but she didn't know if that was a blessing or a curse. 9, she whispered, fluently. James nodded slowly. And you have a degree in international business from the University of Chicago. Maria's face went pale. How did you— The question isn't how I know, James said gently. The question is why someone with your qualifications has been cleaning floors when you should be running international operations. Maria looked down at her hands, weathered from years of cleaning chemicals. Because when you're invisible for long enough, you start to believe that's all you're worth. The simple truth of her statement hit James like a physical blow. His company had failed her completely, and she had accepted it with grace for over a decade. But beneath that acceptance, he now saw the pain of dreams deferred and talents buried. James cleared his schedule for the entire day. He invited Maria to his office, where she sat nervously on the edge of a chair, still wearing her cleaning uniform. I want to offer you a position, James said without preamble, Director of International Relations. Starting salary of $120,000, with full benefits and a signing bonus. Maria stared at him in disbelief. I don't understand. My company has been struggling with international contracts for years. We've lost millions in deals because of communication barriers. Meanwhile, the solution has been cleaning our floors every morning. Mr. Morrison, I appreciate the gesture, but this isn't charity, Maria. This is business. Let me show you something. James pulled out a stack of documents, failed contracts, missed opportunities, cultural misunderstandings that had cost Sterling Enterprises enormous amounts of money. Last month we lost a $50 million deal with a Japanese firm because our translator missed a critical cultural nuance. 2 months ago, a German partnership fell through due to miscommunication. These problems happened. He leaned forward. You prevented 3 international incidents just yesterday morning. In 1 day you saved us more money than we pay you in 2 years. Maria was quiet for a long moment. Why now? You've walked past me thousands of times. James felt the weight of that question. Because I was blind. We all were, and I can't change the past 12 years. But I can change what happens next. What about my current job? We'll hire someone else to clean. What we can't easily replace is someone who speaks 9 languages and understands international business better than our current team. Maria looked out the window at the city skyline. I need time to think. Of course. But, Maria? James stood up. Don't think too long. Your nephew in Syria, our new international relations director, could probably help with his case. We have connections with immigration lawyers. For the first time since he'd known her, Maria smiled, really smiled. When would I start? Word spread through Sterling Enterprises like wildfire. The janitor was becoming a director. Some employees were supportive, others skeptical, and a few were openly hostile. It's ridiculous, complained Sarah from accounting. She's been a janitor for 12 years. You can't just promote someone like that. But James had anticipated the resistance. He arranged for Maria to demonstrate her abilities in a company-wide meeting. The test came sooner than expected. A crisis erupted with their biggest client, a multinational corporation threatening to cancel a $100 million contract due to a misunderstanding with their Italian subsidiary. The regular translator was sick, and tensions were escalating rapidly. The Italian executives were furious, claiming cultural disrespect, while the American team was baffled by the accusations. They're saying we violated some kind of protocol, the project manager explained frantically, but our translator can't figure out what we did wrong. James looked at Maria, who was sitting quietly in the back of the conference room in her new business attire. Would you like to take this one? Maria stood up calmly and took the phone. What happened next silenced every skeptic in the room. She didn't just speak Italian, she became Italian. Her gestures changed, her tone shifted to match the cultural expectations. For the next hour she navigated between Italian, English, German, and even some Japanese as various executives joined the call. But she wasn't just translating words, she was translating intentions, explaining cultural nuances, and building bridges between different business philosophies. She identified that the Italians felt rushed and disrespected by American directness, while the Americans were frustrated by what they saw as inefficiency. In Italian business culture, she explained to both sides, relationships must be nurtured before transactions. The Americans need to invest time in personal connection, not just contract details. She suggested a face-to-face meeting in Rome, arranged cultural consultations, and even recommended specific Italian phrases that would demonstrate respect and commitment. By the end of the call, not only was the contract saved, but the Italian executives had invited Sterling to bid on 3 additional projects worth $50 million combined. When she hung up, the room was silent. The contract was saved, relationships were repaired, and several new opportunities had emerged from what had been a disaster just hours earlier. "Any questions about Maria's qualifications?" James asked the room. There were none. Over the following weeks, Maria transformed Sterling's international operations with systematic precision. She identified communication breakdowns that had cost millions, streamlined cultural training programs, and opened doors to markets they had never successfully entered. Her nephew's refugee application was approved within a month, with help from Sterling's legal team. But the biggest change wasn't in the company, it was in Maria herself. For the first time in over a decade, she walked through the building as herself, brilliant, accomplished, finally valued for who she truly was. 6 months later, Sterling Enterprises had become a different company. International revenue had increased by 300%. They had opened offices in 4 new countries, and their reputation for cultural sensitivity had made them the go-to firm for complex international deals. But James's proudest moment came during the company's annual meeting when he told Maria's story to the entire organization. "We had a brilliant international relations expert working in our building for 12 years, he said to the packed auditorium. "She solved our problems, anticipated our needs, and watched us struggle with challenges she could have fixed effortlessly. But we never saw her because we looked right past her." He paused, looking directly at Maria, who was sitting in the front row in her new executive position. Maria's story isn't just about recognizing hidden talent. It's about the people we overlook every day. The security guard who speaks 4 languages, the cafeteria worker with an MBA, the maintenance staff who understand our hours better than we do. James had implemented a new policy. Every employee, regardless of position, would be interviewed annually about their background, skills, and aspirations. Sterling Enterprises would never again waste human potential due to assumptions and blindness. Maria stood up to address the company. 12 years ago, I took a cleaning job because I needed work and no one would hire me for anything else. I never stopped learning, never stopped growing, and never stopped hoping that someday someone would see me." She looked around the room at faces that had ignored her for over a decade. "Mr. Morrison didn't just give me a job, he gave me back my dignity and my future. But more than that, he changed how this entire company sees people." The standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes. As employees filed out, discussing Maria's journey and examining their own assumptions about the people around them, James realized that saving Maria's career had actually saved his company's soul. Sometimes the most valuable treasures are hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to really look. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to listen, really listen, to change everything.